Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. I'm Roberta Saphire, an attorney in Sharon.
And I'm Camille Barron, a financial advisor specializing in asset protection, also here in Sharon. On this show, we bring you information and advice from a variety of experts in the legal and financial area, answering some of the questions that you, our viewers, have asked for. Our goal is to provide practical information that you can use to help you solve any of the problems that we commonly face sometime or other in our lives. So today, Roberta, who's our guest and what's our topic?
Our topic is foreclosures, and we have with us Emily Smith-Lee, who's an attorney in Sharon. Her practice is not just limited to foreclosures, but to other things, and we'll get right to it. And Emily Smith-Lee, thank you for joining us, and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. I practice here in Sharon, as you say. I practiced for 13 years at a large law firm in Boston doing general business and commercial litigation. A year ago, last week, I believe, opened my practice here in Sharon to try a different pace and a different kind of law. As you say, my practice isn't focused on foreclosures. I do general litigation. But I have seen an increasing number of people coming through the doors who are having issues related to foreclosures or pending foreclosures.
How do they get to that point? Let's go right into foreclosures. Tell our viewers how a foreclosure starts, how it becomes a foreclosure.
Sure. I think what most people understand is, in general terms, a foreclosure is how the bank ultimately takes possession of your home if you're unable to pay your mortgage. What I think a lot of people don't understand is that here in Massachusetts, the bank doesn't have to go to court to get to foreclose your home. Massachusetts is what's called a foreclosure by sale state, which means so long as they follow the proper notice procedures, they can foreclose, they can hold the auction and sell your home without getting a judge to sign off on that. Other states do it differently. We happen to do it this way. Typically what will happen is if you get 3-4 months behind on your mortgage, you will have received a number of increasingly irate notices from your bank.
But they have to notify you, right?
Yes, they
can't
do.
just have a sale.
Correct. You'll get a series of notices about the delinquency. At some point, you'll get a notice that is a pre-foreclosure notice, saying if you don't catch up by the next month, essentially, we're going to start the foreclosure process. The foreclosure process is the notice requirements require that they publish the foreclosure sale in the newspaper in the town in which the land lies for 3 successive weeks, the first one no less than 21 days before the foreclosure date. So here in Sharon, that would be in the Advocate. What people need to understand is that if the Advocate were somehow to go out of business and not be here, they might have to look in the Boston Globe for their foreclosure notices. There's some recent case law saying that even if you're far out from Boston, the Globe is sufficient notice. So you are also required to get a certified letter 14 days before the sale. But there are a lot of steps in the middle and a lot of options. I think the thing that I think it's important for people to understand is, number one, the way foreclosure works here in Massachusetts and what they need to be looking for. Number two, what the options are. This has become, I think in your introduction, Camille, you said the show was for issues commonly faced by people. 5 years ago, I'm not sure you would say foreclosure was an issue commonly faced by your viewers, but more and more so, tragically, people are finding themselves in that situation. And there are some relief programs. There are some places you can go for help. There are some options to either keep your home or insulate yourself from liability for any deficiencies between the amount the home sells for and the amount you owe. The third thing that I think people really need to be aware of is all of the people that are out there ready to take advantage of them. It is an incredibly vulnerable position to be faced with the potential loss of your home. And unfortunately, in this world, there are people who figured out how to make a dollar off of that.
I think it gets to foreclosure, too. Like a lot of good people let the house go to foreclosure because, say they bought it 5 or 10 years ago when the market was up. So say they paid $400,000 for their house, and now their house is only worth $300,000, and the mortgage is $325,000. Well, they're better off in a way. But aren't there, when you said there's people taking advantage, we'll get into that, but aren't there programs now where the bank will work with you, maybe rewrite it, or
There
other
are
options?
The main, first of all, you raise a very good point. I mean, the foreclosure situation of 5-10 years ago, you might have more choices because you might have some equity in your house. You know, if you lost a job or had a life change and couldn't afford it, you could still sell your house and downsize. Virtually everybody in this position now is what you call underwater, where the value of the home is less than the amount of the note, which means you are somewhat trapped. The main relief available in the first instance is something called a loan modification. Many loan servicers have entered into an agreement with the federal government by which they will, under certain circumstances, modify your loan either by stretching it out to a longer period of time, lowering the initial interest rate, whatever way they can tinker with it to get your loan down to 31% of your income.
I've heard, though, and I know that those are supposed to be available, but I've heard a lot of people say that they have a lot of difficulty getting the banks to agree to that. Why do you think that is?
They do. It's a very good question, and there's two potential answers to that. One is the HAMP program, which is what it's called, the Home Affordable Mortgage Program. HAMP, H-A-M-P, is, excuse me, complicated and changing practically all the time. You know, the regulators are still trying to figure out how to get this right as well, so the banks are scrambling somewhat to stay abreast of what they need to do. The other is they're very big organizations, and the sad truth is frequently the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. You know, there are reasons that it is beneficial to the banks to modify the loans, but it can be very hard and very confusing to get through, which is where some of the people taking advantage come in.
Yes.
You know, there are people out there who either advertise themselves as law firms or modification specialists who will take an upfront fee to help negotiate your loan modification. The reality is the Department of Housing and Urban Development has people who will do that for you for free.
Oh, that's good to know.
This comes under scam.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. And I understand they'll call you, go to your door, email you, and do whatever they can, but you have to give them money.
Right.
Which you probably never see them again.
Right. I mean, if you're looking for red flags for somebody who's trying to, offering to help you, I think the first red flag is that they find you and you don't find them. You know, if somebody's trolling the newspaper ads or the legal notices or any other public data. Another is that they're asking for a fee up front. Good, reputable lawyers, this, Roberta, frequently take retainers up front, but that's a different story than saying, you need to pay me $1,500.
Well, don't forget, you've got banks and mortgages. They get away with it because your bank and mortgage companies get their, quote, application fee. So people might think, well, this isn't unusual. What's unusual, instead of $500-600, it might be $5,000-6,000.
Right.
Yeah.
This came from the Department of the Treasury, Comptroller of the Currency, it's an advisory about scams, mortgage foreclosure scams. And it says common types of scams. One of them is called the foreclosure rescue and refinance fraud, where the scam artist offers to act as an intermediary between you and your lender. And then there's the fake government modification program. Unscrupulous people may claim to be affiliated with the government. And there's a couple more here. I just want to mention these because in case any of our viewers happen to be in this position, if they hear these terms, the red flag needs to go up. And then there's the lease back and rent to buy schemes, where you're asked to transfer the title to your home to the scammer, who will supposedly obtain new and better financing. And then there's the bankruptcy scam. You may have heard that filing bankruptcy will stop a foreclosure.
But it does, though, doesn't it?
It says it's true, but only temporarily.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
right. That's right.
But a lot of people do. You file the bankruptcy. That happens all the time, to give them more time.
And I'm no expert in bankruptcy, but that Camille is absolutely right. It suspends it, but it doesn't stop it forever. And
It's
again,
a good bargaining power. A lot of people use that. It's a good bargaining power. The funny thing is some of these things that they say are scams, I've seen work. Like, like you're in trouble, okay, we'll buy the house from you and we'll give you a lease back. Now that could be arranged so that it works.
I think the question is, if I'm a consumer, how do I know how to distinguish the valid one
with the
versus a
scam one.
scam?
Well, maybe Emily can fill us in on that.
I mean, I think those red flags are good ones, that they've laid out there. I would say the thing to do if you're in doubt is you can call a local attorney who's not, somebody who's knocking on your door and soliciting you. You can also ask the HUD counselors, the Housing and Urban Development people. They may not know every scam known to man, but they do this work day in and day out and can help. I mean, I'll tell you a story at kind of a high level of how I got interested in this, which I think illustrates the problem. A woman came to me she had lost her job and been solicited by something appearing to be a law firm. Right after she lost her job, before she was in default on her mortgage, took a sizable chunk of money from her to modify her loan, did nothing about it for 6 or 7 months, and then she was facing an impending foreclosure date, and on the other hand, couldn't get a straight answer out of her bank about whether or not she was eligible for a loan modification. So you've got these sort of pressures on both sides for people, again, in a very, very vulnerable situation.
There's a part of this article also, and maybe we can find a way to make this available to the viewers, 10 warning signs of a mortgage modification scam.
Tell them to email us, and we'll send them the link.
Send us an email, and we'll send you this information. I'll just read the first one.
Go ahead.
Pay us $1,000 and we'll save you a home. I think any time that anyone is looking for money up front, a red flag has to go up, no matter what it is. Would you agree with that?
I think in this context particularly, I mean, again, there's...
That's a good one.
What do you think are the contributing factors now to the rise in foreclosures?
I think it is all of the very well-known pressures of the economy. Obviously, people having job losses, income reductions. Roberta, as you mentioned, this, if you're sitting on a $500,000 house and a $300,000 note, you've got a different set of incentives than if you're sitting on a $300,000 house and a $500,000 note. I also, banks appear to have been in a sort of unusual hurry to foreclose on properties in some states at least. And you got to wonder if maybe there's a reason they need to get these things off their books, even if it causes them some pain.
Inventory makes them look bad. I have a question. Recently, it's either the federal government doing it through the states, but they're having workshops to homeowners on how to avoid foreclosure, and it is said that in some cases they're showing them how to avoid the foreclosure, but in some cases they're even getting the money back. Have you heard about that happening? They're having workshops throughout the state.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's something that's related to HUD. I'm not familiar with the workshops.
It probably is HUD, but that's interesting, people getting money back.
Well, I do know under the HAMP program, if you're approved for a HAMP loan modification, you have the opportunity, once you get an agreement and it goes rolling, to earn some principal forbearance. I think it's like $1,000 a year for 5 years if you pay your...
Now, expand on that,
sure.
principal forbearance?
So, if you get into the HAMP program and have a modified loan and pay all of your payments, on time per the new agreement, I believe it's a certain amount each year that they will knock off for 5 years off of the principal. It's not an enormous amount of money, but it can be helpful to people.
What about the recently with the banks? They've stopped foreclosures because of paperwork. Now, what paperwork is that? Is that the original note and mortgage?
No, there's two issues going on there. One is there's a lot of confusion in these mortgages about who the actual owner of the note is, because...
Well, they sell the paper.
Exactly.
Yeah, before you used to go to your local bank, they had the mortgage. Well, they know Joe Jones. And but now it's not enough that they know Joe Jones, because they're selling the paper to some
That's right.
place who even knows. It could be India, Pakistan, and all of the above.
Well, and this is important for people to know too. I mean, obviously, I think people want to be proactive and avoid having their home sold, but the actual foreclosure sale can be invalidated if the wrong entity, if the correct entity isn't the one selling the house.
Well, go back to the beginning. You buy the house, you have a note and a mortgage with the bank, and you have these other piles of papers that pretty much nobody reads. But then they transfer what they assign the note and mortgage. So is that what the problem is?
Right. So if you took out a mortgage with Eastern Bank, and Eastern Bank then sold it to Bank of America, and I'm not suggesting they do. I don't know what they do with their mortgages.
And Bank of America, Credit Union, Debt Institution of Citizens. We're going to name all the local banks.
And then Bank of America sells it to a Bank of America affiliate that holds its notes for it, and that affiliate sells it to somebody who's securitizing, doing things on Wall Street that none of the three of us totally understand with notes. By the time it comes to foreclosure, if the Company Joe, who currently holds the note, isn't the one who sells the house, hasn't yet taken proper possession of the note, and the entity right before it is the one that goes to foreclosure and sells the house, the sale can be invalidated. So the freeze is because in judicial foreclosure states where the banks have to go to the court to get the ability to foreclose, they have to sign some documents and affidavits attesting to the fact that they're the correct holder of the note. The scandal that sort of led to the moratorium on foreclosures in those states is that those affidavits and those documents were being signed evidently without much regard for their accuracy.
They were called robo-signers.
They're called robo-signers.
Robo-signers?
Right.
Oh, what's a robo? No, I never heard that one.
The allegation, I have no idea how much of this is true, but what's reported in the press is that some of these larger banks were employing people like, Walmart employees and unemployed people and anybody they could find just to sit there and sign documents
But they
all
have
day
to be
long.
notarized.
That's true, but a notary only attests that you're the one that signed it. What you're supposed to do when you sign these papers is make some kind of reasonable inquiry into whether they're true, to sign an affidavit to say we're the correct owner of this note.
Now, this was in the, it was either the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal. The problem is that the paperwork processing at these law firms, they have an automated process in a sense. The allegation is that the paperwork processing at the law firms and lenders allegedly didn't review all the information needed, such as who owned the loan or the borrower's financial information. That is the essence of the
Right.
problem, right? They're not really familiar with all the facts.
Right. And so as a consequence, the freeze doesn't necessarily affect Massachusetts because we're not a judicial foreclosure state.
Well, I noticed that a lot of the foreclosures, there's a lot of them around, which, like you said before, there's more now than there were 5 years ago, are being continued. And I thought in Massachusetts that Bank of America was forestalling the foreclosures, if you want to.
Bank of America has announced, I believe, a across-the-board freeze. Other major lenders have done this freeze only in the judicial foreclosure sales because that's what they see as the heart of the problem is the paperwork that they give to the judge. The Massachusetts Attorney General is pushing pretty hard to get those banks to agree to do the same thing here because it's not just a problem of going to the judge. If you really don't know who holds the note, you can still have
you're
sales
saying the whole thing
invalidated.
is on who holds the note and not the people themselves or the note or the mortgage payments. Years ago, we had a bank for a client, but they had somebody suing them because they were foreclosing, but the person said, well, the note and mortgage was incorrect. It was something about the way the interest was calculated wasn't proper. And I remember we didn't do that type of defense. There was somebody else did it because I don't want anybody to think we lost the case. But that bank, well, that bank, they're out of business now, but
Yeah.
that bank had to pay real big time. So I thought when they were delaying the foreclosures, it was because maybe there was something wrong with the actual note and mortgage.
I see. There may be any number of problems with their paperwork. The real problem, the immediate problem they're facing is that their paperwork wasn't in order. I know the identity of who holds the note is one issue. I don't know if there's others. But you raise an important point that people also should know, that there's certain types of loans. The Attorney General has settled with a couple of lenders under terms that require them to notify the Attorney General before they foreclose on your property because the loans have been deemed presumptively unfair. These are basically the predatory
now,
loans.
if it's unconscionable, unconscionable, and then I want you to go into more what a predatory loan is. It's an unconscionable. They can just void it, which means that the bank won't collect anything if they have to go through the Attorney General. If there's something wrong with the interest rate. Everybody at home, look up at your promissory notes and mortgages and see if they even have the information the way it was supposed to. Like a lot of them have points and this fee and that fee.
Right.
People don't even read what half of these fees are.
Right.
But go ahead when you say predatory.
What's been deemed sort of a presumptively unfair, they have different characteristics. Sometimes they're loans that start off with low interest rates and then go very, very high. Sometimes just the flat-out terms of the loan are pretty onerous. The definition that's sort of surrounding this group of loans are loans that have features that suggest that the lender didn't properly take into account the likelihood that the borrower was going to be able to repay the loan, either because they were judging it on the, so for example, if you have a teaser rate of 3%, your income might well support that, but if you know it's going to go way up in 5 years and you haven't looked at whether your income would support that.
That's a little, I remember reading that, and I always thought that's a little far-fetched, that the bank has to worry about, think that it's not a bank. I'm loaning you money, and I'm supposed to worry whether or not you can repay it. I mean, that's your problem. I mean, but I mean, I can see where they do that. It's because the bank is the big guy and the other one's a little guy. But I mean, if you feel that you can repay it, what do I care if you're agreeing? To pay back 10% instead of 5%.
No, it's
30 years ago, there were rates 12 and 18%. Of course, your prices of the houses, what's going today for $400,000 or $500,000 was $32,000 back then.
Well, this is. I mean, it's a fair point. It's a policy point, not so much a legal point, and you could debate either side of it. I think what's turned it upside down is what's happened to housing values, because if people used to commonly take those loans and then refinance them 4 years in. Now we've got people getting 4 years in and they can't refinance them because they have negative equity. And I think that's the part of the trap that the Attorney General was trying to address in pursuing those cases.
Yeah.
But from a just really practical point of view, if you're in a pending foreclosure situation and you want to know whether your lender is one of the ones that has one of these agreements, you should call the Attorney General's office and find out, because some of them are under additional procedural requirements before they can sell your home.
One good thing about the government stepping in is that they show you, if you're eligible, how to get out of the foreclosure and not ruin your credit. With the short sales and
Yes.
Can you tell us real quickly the difference between the foreclosure and the short sale?
Yeah, absolutely. The short sale, a handful of options like a short sale or a deed in lieu of foreclosure, both of those are ways that you still lose your home, but you don't face liability for the deficiency. So a short sale, the bank will agree to consider taking an offer if the property's on the market with a realtor that's lower than the loan amount and forgive the rest. A deed in lieu of foreclosure is you basically sign over the deed and you both walk away from each other. And in a lot of situations, that's not a terrible that's not a terrible choice, depending on what your situation is.
Now, say they go through a foreclosure, we're at that point, and they do some of the paperwork wrong. Does Massachusetts still have something where they can make what they call an entry, which cures any paperwork which is wrong? Would that also cure that assignment?
It's actually an open question. There's a case that's on appeal to the Supreme Judicial Court right now, which did exactly that, invalidated a sale because the I's weren't dotted and the T's weren't crossed. I always get that inside out. And the lender tried to fix it, and the court said no. It's still an invalid sale. So it remains to be seen.
What about the entry? Do they still do that? Like the entry, they used to say, I make an entry and I herewith foreclose, and then they sign that they made an entry. It's it's different than following the thing.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure on
there's
that
a good
terminology.
point. Use that one. Well, now, is there any recent changes in the law that people should be aware of?
Yes, a couple. The main one, the Massachusetts statutes have been amended to expand your your period where you can redeem the mortgage and avoid the foreclosure under certain circumstances, and they're probably too long and complicated to go into here. And in that same enactment, trying to impose some obligations on the bank to communicate, to negotiate in good faith, to take the initiative and notify people of their rights and their options in terms of foreclosure alternatives. The HAMP regulations are changing all the time. One of the newer ones is that if you submit a HAMP application to the bank and they deny it, they cannot foreclose within 30 days of giving you the written denial of the modification request. And they cannot foreclose while it's pending.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which people should be aware of. There are some deadlines. I mean, I believe if you're already in foreclosure and you want to submit a HAMP modification, I believe you have to do it at least 7 days before the sale date.
Yeah.
But
Well, with that, we're going to go into our You've Got to Be Kidding segment. That's where we try to inject a little humor. But we do thank you for coming in
Sure.
case we forgot. If anybody has any questions that they want to know, they can email us. We'll see that they get to Emily. Or if you want any forms or who to contact, you can contact us. But anyway, you got any emails from our viewers? Because I have.
I think you have a situation that...
the chutzpah. Somebody said to me, what's chutzpah? Well, I have something chutzpah, but before I get that, about foreclosures, I mean, this is called sick humor in a way. But it's true, you can do this. If your property's been foreclosed or you've got a property at foreclosure, on the light side is you can go try to get an abatement of your taxes because it wasn't worth what the town is assessing you for. So you can do that.
That's
turning
lemons into lemonade.
Yeah, but anyway, there was how to make sure you won't get hired. Somebody, I got to tell you this one. Job opportunity, we put an ad in the paper, and the person said, well, I want to work for you because you've got such nice benefits, and I'm planning on being out a lot for next year.
You got to be kidding.
No, that's a true one. But for the definition of chutzpah, this was an email from someone, and they sent me that they want to know they have the best definition of chutzpah in a light way. And I said, well, they got one. They rented an apartment to somebody, and there was a TV and other stuff in it, and it was in the winter, and the police knew that they took the TV. There were footprints going from the window, but not going back out. And he took the TV, and then afterwards he wanted a reduction in the rent because he said his apartment had no TV. It was a furnished apartment. No, I'm not kidding. But that's it for this segment.
And it was good that we had a lot of information to help consumers. I think that's really a good sign that things are evolving that way.
We're here, and that's what we're here for. We're here to help our audience, to help our consumers, topics that you want. We've been getting such great feedback. I know we're going to get a lot of interest in the foreclosures too, but I'm going to let Camille wrap it up as she always does nicely.
Right. So please send us your emails, whether it's about this topic, whether it's about any other. You have questions, please send us your topics because this is your show. The law, your money, and you.